So we have a good idea of what should be left. It's not very much.
Despite that, the U.S. has consistently moved the goalposts and said it's not enough if they abide by the requirements regarding weapons of mass destruction. Instead of saying, if you abide by the requirements of the UN resolution, sanctions will be lifted, the U.S. message is, it doesn't matter whether you comply or not, we're not going to lift sanctions anyway.
When UNSCOM began, I believe it was a legitimate effort to track down and destroy dangerous weaponry. And in fact, the Atomic Energy Agency and others were just about ready to clear UNSCOM, their work, and agree that Iraq was clean. Then Richard Butler was appointed, and he reopened many of the issues that in fact had been closed, and seemed to bring a new element to the investigation, perhaps very much supported by Washington.
Unfortunately, the actions of its executive chairman, Richard Butler, in concert with the United States government, allowed UNSCOM to be manipulated in a way which was outside the guidelines set forth by its true boss, the Security Council. The United States and the United Kingdom used UNSCOM as a trigger for the initiation of military action. The United States and Great Britain used information gathered by weapons inspectors to provide targets for their bombing. This is an accepted fact. So UNSCOM as an organization has been discredited.
It's true that an inspection entity of that sort can be manipulated politically and give an excuse to the more aggressive member states for further military action. And in a sense, we have that every day, almost every day of the week, when UK and American planes are bombing Iraq.
The Americans are bombing what they call the Iraqi radars, which is not true. They are bombing infrastructure. They are bombing homes of people. They have even bombed a tent of Bedouins with their animals, with the whole family who are dead. Every single day there was a bombing of Iraq. But not one of the media have spoken about that.
Now, if you don't see it in the media abroad, it's because I think people are, and it's becoming a too small story for it's not as interesting as before.
On the 17th of January 1993, Bush sent 42 missiles on that date. One of them hit a Rashid Hotel when I was there.
Germany. I'm a German journalist from Bild Zeitung. I think I'm the only one that was injured.
The air attacks that you referred to are defensive in nature. Since 1991, there has been a no-fly zone in the north of Iraq. This no-fly zone was imposed, I will recall for your audience, after the Iraqi regime forced the exodus of over 500,000 Kurdish inhabitants of northern Iraq. The UN passed Resolution 688 that said that this should not happen, and then a no-fly zone was imposed in the north.
There is no reference in any UN resolution to the establishment of no-fly zones in northern or southern Iraq. The U.S. has imposed them, and with the British kept them in place, and the result is that civilians in the north and in the south, whose lives ostensibly are to be protected by the establishment of those no-fly zones, are being killed not by Iraqi soldiers or Iraqi planes, but by American bombings that go off course. That's who is killing the Iraqi civilians now in the northern and southern no-fly zones. One of the very bitter lessons of these years of war, both economic war and military war against Iraq, is that for the United States government, and I think for most governments in the Security Council, humanitarian considerations are simply not enough to influence policy. We have, of course, the famous statement by Madeleine Albright in 1996 when she was asked about the deaths at that time of 500,000 Iraqi children that have died as the result of sanctions. And of course, she did not dispute the figure. She simply thought about it for a moment and then said, on balance, we think it's worth it.
The 60-minute show entitled Punishing Saddam, where State Secretary Madeleine Albright made this insensitive remark, aired on May the 12th, 1996. It has since been censored by CBS under political pressure. If indeed the price is worth it, as Ms. Albright declared, again, who is paying that price? And what does it buy? Is it really an attempt to force Saddam out of power, as is being claimed by the United States administration?
Well, the Iraqi Liberation Act is an additional expression of our concern about the regime that's in charge in Baghdad. The United States believes that this situation involving Iraq would be immeasurably better were Saddam Hussein no longer the leader of Iraq. The act passed by Congress is designed to provide support and resources.
According to the Iraqi Liberation Act, they said that they are ready to give the Iraqi opposition non-lethal equipment. They are thinking about computers and mobiles and desks and so on, and I don't think that by mobiles and computers we will be able to remove Saddam Hussein from power.
In other parts of the world, Washington has never proved to come short of ideas and solid means to get rid of governments deemed hostile or worth removing.
In 1992, when we first established the INC, we were planning to have an uprising, national resistance against the regime. In April 1995, we started this uprising, the military operation of it, but the Americans refused again to support that uprising, and Saddam Hussein was able to crush it.
To this day, Saddam Hussein remains Washington's most convenient bogeyman, justifying the continuing pressure on Iraq and in the Gulf region in general.
There was a belief, I think, for many years that somehow sanctions would lead to the removal of Saddam Hussein. Very naive, because in fact, economic sanctions and their impact have made Saddam Hussein stronger.
Why the embargo strengthened the regime of Saddam Hussein? First, because the mere livelihood of people became dependent on the government. He controlled people through starving them. But more important is that the embargo created a new class living very comfortably attached to him. You see nobody getting 100 times as much as a doctor. Why? Because he is part of the security system. And therefore he should be fed well, he should be given good accommodation. He created